Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I want to talk about how avoidance usually craves something prior to falling in love. Usually, this is something that they need to fall in love. And just to keep it very short and brief so you guys know what it is, and then we'll talk about what it looks like so you can implement that. It's basically genuine accountability while managing your emotions. I'm not saying blame yourself for everything. That's why I wanted to mention genuine accountability. This is different than you just saying, apologizing all the time, or apologizing or taking credit for something you didn't do in a bad way, where it's you're taking credit for something that went wrong in the relationship. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you actually genuinely realize I was a little emotional at this point. I reacted a little poorly. I said things a little negatively. That's what I mean. And so, how do you do this? The first one is you want to pause before reacting, okay? When you feel triggered, your body does go into a somewhat of a defensive mode. And usually, accountability does kind of get lost here. This is the same thing with avoidance. They struggle with this as well, just a different version of it, okay? When avoidance get triggered, they also get into defensive mode. And when they stay in that defense, it's very hard for them to take accountability. For you, your trigger might not be shutting down, it might be more overly emotional. Not in a, I don't mean overly emotional. Just hopefully you take that with a grain of salt. All that I mean is that you might be overwhelmed with emotions. And that's why I mentioned genuine accountability while managing your emotions, okay? And so taking a deep breath can really help. Pausing for 5 to 10 seconds before responding. You can even say, I need a minute before I respond. So let's say, for example, an avoidance says something like this to you. They say, sometimes I don't know what to say because you can be a lot. Let's just say that's what they said, okay? That's hurtful to hear. I get that. However, before that emotional flooding begins to take over and create some reaction in you, take a deep breath, admit that, okay, that was hurtful. You can even say it out loud. You can say it out loud and process with them. That was hurtful. I'm still processing. Give me a minute before I respond. They will take you a little more seriously as well, and they will be more comfortable opening up and seeing their own feelings because their triggers are now less, which allows them to see their love, okay? The next one is we want to separate your responsibility and your emotions. And we want to understand that they can exist at the same time while still being separate concepts, okay? You can say, I feel hurt or embarrassed. That's your emotion. Okay. Then you can also have the responsibility, but I still messed up. I said something unfair. They can happen at the same time. Let's say your avoidant partner did not text you all day. That's a reason to be upset. That's a reason to be frustrated, depending on your relationship. And maybe because of that, you text them multiple times and you called them names. Okay. So 2 things happened. You were hurt about something. That is valid. But your reaction also could have been tweaked or managed better. That's also true. Both can be at the same time. Sometimes, especially if you're anxious, preoccupied, because you're hurt, the responsibility or reaction, you blend the two. You can't separate them. And so then what happens is you might think 2 things. You might think that they should know better. I know I reacted, but it's because they're doing A, B, and C. Sure, I understand. But the reaction can still be separate. Or what you do is you say, I don't want to react that way, so I'm not going to say anything about how I feel hurt or embarrassed. They're attached. Keep them separate. You can still say you're hurt and embarrassed, but you can say it in a different way. So that's the best way to put it for now, okay? The next one is you want to own your actions clearly while still understanding that you can still expect them to do the same thing. A lot of times people think if you're the one owning the reaction, accountability, the other person cannot take accountability as well. No, in fact, you both should take accountability together. And you can start if you want, they can start either way. But example, a structure can be, I did A, B, and C, whatever that is, and I understand how that affected you. I take responsibility for that. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to explain it. People think you're not allowed to have any explanation or even justification. I'm not saying your action is justified, but the reason why you did it is still a reason. It can help, especially if you're in a relationship. You can say, the reason I did this is because I felt overwhelmed that you didn't text me. I probably could have been more calmer, and I can completely appreciate and understand that. I just want you to know where I'm coming from. It doesn't mean what I did was right and I want to change. You don't want to say, like you're overreacting, or that's not what happened, or you shut down too easily, you're too sensitive about certain things, you need to get better with emotions. You don't want to put any blame on them, because then it makes them feel it's hard for them to fall in love, because their love is going to show up a little differently than yours, and it's from their vulnerability. And so if they're not allowed to feel safe, it's going to be hard for them to fall in love. And so that's just something to keep in mind, okay? The next one is labeling your emotions, usually out loud. I think I recommend it out loud, but it's up to you to decide, instead of reacting. And so you can say, I'm feeling embarrassed, but I still want to understand you. I'm feeling frustrated that you didn't, call me on my birthday, but I want to hear your side. I feel hurt that you forgot about our date. And I feel like this is happening more often, but I still want to hear your side. And I also want to figure out a solution together. Labeling your emotion is very important. A lot of you guys think I'm not allowed to label my emotions because it's going to trigger them. First of all, if you want to be with this person, you expect them to change, right? Because they can't stay in this unhealthy version forever. I imagine you want a healthy relationship. And so they have to get used to your emotions as well. But you can say it more palatable. And that's what we're talking about today. Okay. The next one is you want to validate your partner's experiences. Even if you don't agree with every single detail, validation is different than I agree, okay? Validation isn't always saying you're right, I'm wrong. That's not what it is. It's acknowledging their feelings while still maybe taking that acknowledgement to readjust your behavior or learn something from their side. I can see how that hurt you. I get why you felt that way. I get why you felt defensive. Your feelings make sense given what happened. I think from your side, I might feel that way too. I know that you've been stressed. I have to keep in mind about that. I know you had a long work day. That's probably adding to it too. It doesn't mean what I did is right, but I can understand. Coming from their perspective, from their angle, opening up from their side, because it's going to make them feel like accountability and love are close. And that you can still love them and they can still love you while still having conflict resolution. Avoidants are uncomfortable with conflict. So that's why this is very important, okay? Share your perspective after you've taken responsibility. I take responsibility for texting you 12 times during your meeting. I'm not saying you would do that, just an example, okay? I was overwhelmed, but there's no excuse. I felt really anxious because I felt like last night you didn't apologize for what happened. And I think I got in my head. However, I do think there's something to be said that I know normally you come around and you do apologize. And so I'm really sorry about that. You can explain it from your side, okay? And the next one is you want to move forward, I guess the best way to put it, without shaming yourself. Accountability doesn't mean you shame yourself. A lot of people are so afraid to take accountability because they actually have a hard time living with themselves to some extent that they did this. That's not reality. We all make mistakes. Yes, you made a mistake. Maybe you were emotional. Maybe you were too overwhelming, but they did stuff too. That's how relationships work. Accept it, admit it, and move on. It's hard. And I can definitely appreciate that. I think a lot of you guys watch my videos, many of my videos on both of my channels. And I just want to say that I think that you guys are making a lot of progress. I'm really proud of you guys. I'm really grateful for you guys. And you guys teach me things too. So I hope you take this video well. And I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.